So I'm here with Leon, who's been lucky enough to play how much of Dead Space? Quite a bit.
The first 3 hours, I think, about first 3 chapters, which was about 3-ish hours.
How early in the game is this?
This is right at the beginning. The telekinesis is the first module you get. You have your two powers is telekinesis, which lets you move things, and the time one, stasis, which lets you slow things down. So it follows the original game very, very closely. You crash land on the Ishimura, which has gone sort of silent. You discover it's just blood and guts everywhere. The engine's broken. You don't really know what's going on. You're immediately attacked by these kind of corpse aliens, the necromorphs. And the opening of the game is you're trying to get the engines online. You're trying to refuel them, start them. Then you've got to get the asteroid defense system online because you're about to go up in orbit. And that is kind of, the opening chunk is trying to basically make the ship not crash. And this is me running around trying to get the first things you have to do is get the fuel lines connected, get the engines online. I think actually you have to get the tram line running first. This lady's about to give me the pulse rifle, which is one of the more offensive weapons, because obviously the whole point is you cut off their limbs. That's the classic line. But I found it actually really effective, a lot more effective in this than the original game, both in terms of damage, because it can just really almost stun lock them and hold them back. And it has the alternate fire mode, which is a grenade launcher from Dead Space 2, instead of what the original game had, which was a kind of a 360 burst fire, which wasn't, hugely useful.
So with you mentioned that there's a couple of changes. It's weird, isn't it? Because I've watched what you've played, and large parts of it follow the original game exactly down to the cinematics and various other things. But
it's the original game. It's they haven't really. It's a remake, so they haven't really changed a great deal of it. You can. Things like these characters here, the little scary wall guys, they appeared, I think, a little bit earlier in the game, but they're in the original game. They reordered some of the stuff because the ship is now a much more coherent, it's a coherent single space, so you can move freely throughout the whole ship from start to finish, which means it's changed slightly in order to make that work and to make it logical. This bit here is actually one of the big changes, where you have to get the codes from the captain's rig. And this happens behind glass in the original game. You just watch it, and then the monster comes through glass and attacks you. Here it's this big sort of beautiful set piece where he transforms on you, and you have to then you'll go back out into the space and you'll fight him. So the gameplay is the same. Get the code, defeat the turned captain, but they just made it much more of a sort of a cinematic thing. And there's a few bits here and there where you get the fuel things online, get the trams online, go to different places, and they're in a slightly different order just because the ship is now this space you can properly move through. But stuff, for the most part, is all kind of the same. The air vents are the same that they come out of.
It's nice to know it's still gory.
Oh yeah, still super gory. It's still really scary. I forgot kind of how kind of just perpetually loud it is. It's it's a jump scare that kind of never stops. There's, if you're not being attacked by the necromorphs, there's clanging noises, electrical accidents making sparks fly.
It's good that it's still scary.
Oh, it's just constantly scary. And the thing is, because you're rushing around, they've got these people in your ear going, we're going to crash, we need to do the engine, we need to do this. You're sort of more focused on the immediate problems of not crashing into the planet below. So the necromorphs are almost kind of in the way of your objective list.
So they keep that tension ramped up, even when you're doing something like this, when you're exploring a room. This is another thing that they've upgraded. In the original game, this is just a little video log, and it comes up almost like a pop-up, a little screen in front of you, and you watch a video. And now they've turned it into these holographic. It's a video message basically, but it's now a holographic thing you can stand and watch. There's messages you used to get from Nicole. It's half the reason you're there is your sort of ex-girlfriend. You're trying to sort of find. She now appears in the medical bay and walks around as a hologram. So it's much more kind of immersive sort of stuff. It was a very immersive game originally, but they've obviously got more sort of power now to sort of do things like this, whereas before it was just a video clip that you just watched of these guys talking. The dialogue's almost identical. Oh, really?
Yeah, they made some changes obviously because Isaac now talks. It's Gunnar writes the voice of Isaac from Dead Space 2 onwards. So they've rewritten it in that he now talks to people, answers them. He doesn't talk to himself. He's not walking around going I best go to engineering now. If they ask him a question, he'll answer, and he'll say things like, "Holy shit, what was that?" But he's now written into the sort of the dialogue and the talking. But it's still the same thing. It's still the same story. You're still kind of trying to get the ship working, get off the ship, find out what happened. They have apparently incorporated some of the lore from the later games and the later comics. So there'll be a bit more about the convergence, stuff like that.
Okay,
this
nice.
is this lift is a famous kind of bit from the original game that is almost like shot for shot. You get on the lift, you go across. It's like a cable car, and as you're going across, they all start to pile in on the other side. So you're like, you have the time limit almost of when you get to the other side to take them all out.
So with this, with all the enemies appearing at different timings and stuff, there's something in this new game they've got called the Intensity Director, which adjusts enemies when they appear and what they do.
They clarified this. It's not like it doesn't. What it does is it looks at, say, the intensity of the game. So if it's been quiet for a while, it'll spawn some monsters.
Yeah.
And it's kind of intended for, because you can backtrack and travel and you can go back and forth across the whole ship. You'll never have that kind of like, well, I've cleared this area, it's safe. There'll be, if you have a massive boss fight or a big scene like the cargo lift we just saw a minute ago, it'll be like, yeah, it's been busy for a while. It's almost like a cooldown.
Yes. Did you notice it when you were playing?
Well, you never feel safe. Yeah, you're always constantly kind of like aware that at any point, something could jump out of an air vent, and it really is. It's like they've kind of gamified that kind of it's quiet, too quiet kind of feeling. So yeah, like there's a couple of times when I sort of backtracked, it was too quiet for too long. Yep. And I was like, something's going to happen.
Something's gonna happen. Yeah, there's something the tingling on the back of your neck. So something that again, something else they brought over, even the look of it, is the upgrading. Yeah,
it's all very similar. Like I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if it's exactly the same layout in terms of upgrades, because they have changed some of the alt fire modes and stuff like that. They've incorporated some Dead Space 2, 3 ideas into it, so I think maybe the actual paths could be a little bit different. But
is the plasma cutter as powerful as in the first game? Because I remember you could.
Oh yes,
it's such a great gun. You're like, if you just want to sit on that, you can use it a lot.
I found it's a really useful gun, but I found weirdly the pulse rifle was surprisingly useful this time, more so than last time. When I went back and played the original after playing this, I keep trying to call it the line rifle, the pulse rifle is quite weak, and it's sort of like your if I have to kind of rifle. It never felt as effective, whereas in here it was a really viable choice. I used a lot, especially with the grenade launcher, because if you didn't mind sacrificing, I think it fires a mag out that explodes.
Right.
And if you don't mind, if you've got enough ammo, that clears the room if you land it in the right spot.
Right. So you've mentioned about backtracking and being able to go through the Ishimura. Once you've unlocked an area, you can go back, and if you want to go and find something, that's great. Did you quite enjoy that bit, and like the UI that they've improved as well? It's
going to be interesting. Yeah, well, the UI is kind of still the same. They've still got the little laser map that fires out the palm of your hand. They haven't changed any of that kind of thing. But what they talked about is the ship is now a coherent sort of traversable space, whereas before it was a series of levels. Now it kind of it physically exists, so which is why a few things have moved around, because if you're gonna be able to go from one place to another, you'll notice if you're like, well, I've just gone up, why am I not below, or why am I below the thing if I've just gone up? So it's more a case of like they've designed it to be a coherent physical space.
In the last game there were a few puzzles.
It's not right. Yeah, I didn't see many puzzles. It's more
you have to get this and move over there, and then you're walking into a bunch of them.
The stuff I saw was very much the same. Like you have to repair the tram first of all, and the way you do that is you get these robot arms, use kinesis to move them to grab the broken tram and then to get it out. But one of them is broken and detaches too quick, so you use stasis to freeze it and then move the other one. It's exactly the same in both the games. The same with the centrifuge. To get the centrifuge up and running, you have these kind of enormous ignition motors, but they're spinning, so if you try and move them in without stasis, they'll just ping straight out. So it's a lot of very similar puzzles. The main thing is this sort of incredible sort of visual upgrade, and occasionally sort of pacing and kind of objective orders. It's still like you can see they're throwing a flammable fuel thingy with kinesis. That's like still a very core kind of mechanic. I found much like I did when I played the original game. Like if I found one, I'd just pick it up and carry it.
I'm just taking it with me.
If anything appears, it's just like, well, you're gone.
Yeah, you're free ammo. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, the first few hours is this kind of trying to get everything working, trying to get up and running, and the puzzles as such are kind of just working out how to make things run, how to make the engines work, how to get things moving. Some of us just had to clear some obstacles, but it's more of an action horror than a puzzle horror.
I always found the puzzles in the first game were like, because they weren't immensely difficult, it was like, you're just using this to push me in a direction, and I know something's gonna while I'm midway through this, something's gonna jump out, and it's just like,
it's very much it's things to do, not things to solve, really.
Yeah. So with the immersion and the upgrades as well, one of the things you've already mentioned is Isaac has a voice, which he got in 2 and 3 but didn't have in 1, and they've got the voice actor from 2. Did you feel that really helped to flesh him out? Do you think it's well done?
Yeah, it's they got Isaac's, I believe it's Gunnar Wright, I'll have to double check that, or do a pop up if I'm wrong. It's Gunnar Wright, and the woman who played Nicole is also back, so they got essentially the two main kind of people. Hammond, the other lot, I don't know if they're the original voices or not, but it adds well to everything. I think the original game, if you play it now, he is a silent protagonist in the original game, and it's one of those ones where every now and then people say something, you're like, it's a bit weird, he's not answering.
You would say something in this scenario.
Yeah, he's not chatty. He will answer a question if he's asked, or he'll offer an opinion. Like he's a sort of, it just sounds like a normal part of the conversation. But he doesn't talk loads when you're on your own. Like when you're doing your own thing, he's very much just goes back to being a kind of silent protagonist. But he will talk to people, and it fits. It works well.
Nice.
It's
so
good level kind of acting.
So after a couple of hours of playing it, and then immediately going back and playing the original, initial thoughts?
It's weirdly very it felt very exact in terms of how much it was reproducing the original game. It feels like it might diverge more later on. It felt, I wondered if the opening was a bit more of a homage, like a kind of a real, like, we're just going to hit all these key points everyone remembers, and then maybe we'll do something a bit different.
And then when you're
on.
happy with us,
okay, but it's exactly how I remembered the original in my head. And then when you go back and play the original, you're like, actually, it's quite quiet and it's quite plain looking, and it's not as scary as you remember. This is like sort of hits your memory, not the reality of what it used to be.
It's that perfect thing for a remake.
Yeah.
The nostalgia filter that you'd put on it, it goes into that, and it's that's great. Well, really, so can't wait to see what the full game's going to be like, and how much do they play with stuff and everything. But the moment looks fantastic, looks horrific, and it's exactly what you'd want.
Yeah,
from the Dead Space remake.